Okay, in this video that I'm gonna be doing, I'm basically gonna be doing a response. I don't want to say a counter argument, but a response to a lot of the comments that I got for one video that I put up a while back. A while ago, a couple of months or so ago, I put up a video called "Why Race Isn't Important, Only Ethnicity," where I was just basically explaining my reasons for not putting emphasis on race and only on my ethnicity, because I think that ethnicity is the only thing that really is important in defining. And it got a couple of views. I guess you could say it stirred up a little bit of controversy. Some people, at least half the people that viewed it disagreed with my views on that, and basically they were saying that my mentality to not put emphasis on race is a hindrance for the black race, they call it, as a whole. My mentality is a hindrance, and it doesn't do anything to help blacks progress or whatever as a whole. So I just wanted to basically respond to people like that who say my way of thinking is, just unproductive or whatever. It's not a good thing. They see it's a negative thing. I got some notes that I took down just so I can cover my main points. So first off, well, basically this video will be entitled "Uniting to Compete," or "Should we unite to compete?" My answer is that's not really, because it's really impossible. The unity that people speak of that blacks need in order to compete with other races, it doesn't exist, and people have tried to establish that, make that work for the longest. I mean, for generations, people have been trying to do that, what they're speaking of, and it ain't worked yet. So I don't know how people think it's going to work now all of a sudden. And they make that seem like that's the key to blacks as a whole advancing. And again, this will only apply to people who actually believe in defining themselves based on race. I don't. I only define myself based on my ethnicity. Race is something that was socially constructed by white people in power for their own purposes, because it was beneficial for them at the time to, of course, divide people into categories in order to conquer. It's not a coincidence. Race is not a natural thing. Anybody that studies that knows that. But another thing, when you're speaking of competing, united to compete against other races, you got to remember the only real two races, as far as I'm concerned, that are official are black and white. Anything else is really, you can interpret it a million ways. Like for instance, Asians. Like, what the fuck do that mean? Anybody can be a damn Asian. And Asians as a whole, they not united as a race. Asians don't identify with other people that's categorized as Asians. So we ain't the only ones. For you to say that I'm some black person that don't identify with other black people and don't believe in a race and don't want to be categorized in a race, I'm one of millions of people within other races that don't believe in that shit. For instance, even North Koreans and South Koreans, they not even united. So for people to even emphasize or insist on building some type of unity amongst races to compete, that's stupid, because don't nobody really believe in that, whether they of the so-called black race or the Asian race or whatever. Only group of people that really emphasize that the most is whites, because that has worked for them to establish basically dominance over the world. And I don't mean dominance like they're gods or something. I mean like I guess you could say a stronghold over finances of the world, stronghold over resources, anything they got to do with making money, pretty much. That was beneficial for them. But so that's why they try to maintain some type of racial identity or whatever, only because it serves a benefit as a whole. But they don't really even identify with each other racially. I mean, a lot of white people, or people that be categorized as white in another country, they hate Americans regardless of whether they white, black, or whatever. Like I said, a little bit of unity amongst them is really political, and it really comes down to politics and power. It ain't got nothing to do with everyday white people. everyday white people don't identify with other white people around the world for the sake of progressing and being successful. They only identify with white people in America, just like I only identify with black people in America. That just makes sense, to be identifying with people all over the world just because they got the same color skin as you. That's stupid, especially when a lot of people that's darker than me don't even consider themselves black. So before you start talking about uniting to compete with other races, you gotta first remember that even defining what's black, that's ambiguous. It's not even clear what that even means. You go from country to country, people got their own definitions, which is one main reason people shouldn't even be trying to argue that whole we need to unite to compete thing. And again, like I said, most people within a race, they don't even want to be in a race, not just blacks. So you can't even really say, technically, don't none of these damn races that people say we're in competition with even exist, because the people within these races don't believe in it. Asians don't believe that they should be categorized in one race, what other races are there anyways? Or Asians, white, black, and maybe one other group. Most people don't believe in that shit. Most people emphasize the most important thing, which is the only thing that matters: your nationality, your ethnicity, your ethnic group. Okay, so you gotta keep that in mind. But moving on, looking at my notes, first, let's see, every race or sub-race has always been able to maintain a universal identity or sustain unity early on because they weren't dispersed all over the world. Okay, that's one of the main problems. First of all, historically, blacks have been spread all over the world, which made it hard to establish any type of unity or maintain any type of unity. No, scratch that. Actually, when I think about it, what am I saying? In order to maintain something, it would have to have existed in the first place, which it never did. There never was no unity amongst black people. Obviously, because blacks in Africa were the same damn people who enslaved other blacks. White people didn't enslave black people enslaved black people. And they sold them, and whites bought them. But for the most part, whites didn't do any enslavement. They didn't hunt down black people. That ain't white people's style to do hard work. They do the easy work and let black people do the hard work for them. Okay? So in order to even say that, for me to actually say that we couldn't maintain some type of unity because we were dispersed all over the world, that's actually false, because that unity actually never really existed. Because if it did, slavery would have never ever took off the way it did and became a global thing. So yeah, really, that's bogus to say that that was destroyed or something by white people or whatever. Also, unlike every other race, the ethnic groups that make up the black race all have identities that derive from their relationships with whites within the slave community. In other words, every ethnic group of the black race is defined more by those who enslaved and oppressed them than by their so-called race. Okay, which is true. The people that have the most influence over you are the ones that that enslaved you. I mean, there's no doubt about that. First of all, you can't argue that, because their main objective first was destroying the traditions and the culture that you might have brought over in order to impose their own culture and their own views and religion on you. So you can't really argue that our identities are definitely linked with those who enslaved us. Not saying that they completely define us, I'm saying they influence us. I won't even say they define us, because to say they define us, that gives them too much power. It makes it seem as if I'm saying they have so much power over us mentally or whatever, but which to a certain degree they have. I mean, due to psychological, I guess a psychological abuse, you could say, from slavery. But overall, I wouldn't phrase it as they define us, but they definitely have a great influence over us historically and culturally, and you can't deny that. Whereas the color of your skin, it ain't got no, it doesn't have any impact on you historically or culturally, except for the fact that historically it has been the reason that you were discriminated against. You can say that your race, plays the impact on how your people have been treated historically, but not the way that they act and all that other stuff. Okay, My question would be, how can you establish a universal identity amongst ethnic groups whose identity depends or derives so much from those who enslaved them and where they were enslaved more than the color of their skin? And you just can't do that, because you can't separate the individual black ethnic groups from those that enslaved them, the whites that enslaved them. Not only that, but how can you speak of unity amongst a race that has never had anything that was universally accepted by all ethnic groups? And I kind of covered this a little bit when I was speaking earlier about how it's never been no unity amongst blacks. Even before slavery, blacks always had differences in everything from religion to language. Because of the history of slavery and disbursement, there's a much greater amount of differences within the black race, which there always been even before slavery really took off outside of Africa, because Africans have always been so divided. So that's really like a fallacy. It's a imaginative thing for people to assume it's been so much unity amongst blacks and it was just destroyed by white people. If it was so much unity, they wouldn't have ever been able to conquer blacks the way they did. These differences that the different black ethnic groups have are what help give us our identities as an ethnic group. In order to truly unite for the sake of competing would require us to sacrifice a lot of these differences, which means sacrificing parts of our identity. Okay? And it's not worth it. Because blacks live worldwide, most of our identities derive from a particular nation. Of course, the nation where we were enslaved in, most likely. Nations dominated by those who we are said to be in competition with. So basically, for blacks to compete would mean to compete with the same groups whose identity, who define them to a certain degree culturally and historically, who played a major influence on their identity anyways. Within a country like America, it's possible to unite to a certain degree because a lot of American-born people of foreign descent or who have foreign ancestry are willing to sacrifice their heritage, at least when you're talking about certain blacks. Like if you have certain blacks from the Caribbean come over and they have kids, a lot of their kids grow up and they reject a lot of their parents' culture. If they say, like, if they might be from the Bahamas, they might conform more to the culture within America that blacks in America have established, whereas a lot of blacks, older blacks, might not. Then again, you got some younger blacks who maintain their parents' culture and they have it live on. But even so, it's still a great division amongst blacks of different ancestry. Like me personally, myself, I define myself as being of American ancestry, and I don't identify with people regardless of whether they're born in America and just have foreign ancestry, or if they were born in a foreign country. I don't identify with, for instance, a person that's born in America of Caribbean descent or something. I don't identify with them because their history is different, their struggles was different, how their culture and everything was established is different. Even though they might have completely embraced the culture that my people established, I still don't identify with them. And not only that, but different ethnic groups within America, we are in competition with each other as blacks. So I mean, that's even more of a reason for it to be hard for us to unite. These same people we're supposed to be united with, we don't identify with, and we're in competition with them. And a good example of being in competition with them would be like me, for instance. I live in South Florida. I'm originally from South Florida. If I go to a certain job and it's a dude with an accent and he picks up on the fact that another person applying for the job is of the same background as him, we both black, he might show favoritism towards that person because I'm obviously not of the same background as him or whatever, and he might give him the job. Not necessarily, but that has happened a lot. I mean, you can go into a lot of stores in South Florida and you see the damn managers of a certain background, Jamaican in some senses, all the damn employees mostly are Jamaican, and on, and that's not a coincidence. Okay, so how will we unite with people like this who obviously show favoritism to people within their own ethnicity, which they should. They should identify more with your own people. Okay, but I'm just saying, That unity is not there. I mean, again, talking about competing with other races, we compete with each other because we don't even identify with each other as being of one race. This one race, it actually, the shit don't exist. Okay, only in a physical form, meaning the color of our skin. Psychologically, the shit never has been fully established because we never actually acknowledged it as being a fact, because it ain't a fact. Okay, so again, these same people we supposed to be united with, we competing for resources with jobs, homes, etc., all of that. Okay, so that's just not realistic. I think that about covers most of my points. I don't want this video to be too long. I might have to cut it up into two separate parts. But yeah, that's just my response to people who out there again believe that the way for the black race to compete is to unite. Those people out there who mentality is unite to compete, pretty much, I just don't think they're really thinking about it realistically. In an ideal world, that might work, but actually in an ideal world, it shouldn't be no such thing as races competing. It should be one human race. So I mean, they really need to do away with that shit. And a person's objective should be more to unite all people, and to put emphasis on a human race versus individual races, because that's still dividing pretty much. And I mean, what you perpetuating is division still. I mean, it's not on the same scale. You know, if you divide people into races, you still dividing. Maybe not on the same, maybe not to the same degree as dividing everybody up into just ethnic groups, because that's on a large scale. It's a lot more ethnic groups, obviously, than races. But you still dividing, and the best thing would be to have a mentality to unite all people as best as possible. I mean, it's a limit to how united people going to be, obviously, because we always going to have differences, which means it's always going to be division. But that should be people's goal more than just emphasizing race, which really don't exist. At the end of the day, that's not a fact or nothing. And that's just my views on that. That's how I see it.